Right now, we are just now learning that Senator Mitch McConnell is still in the hospital. That, according to a spokesperson for the former Senate leader. The statement reads, Senator McConnell appreciates the outpouring of support he's receiving while he continues his recovery in the hospital. The senator continues to improve and is working closely with his staff and make that his staff on Kentucky and Senate matters while the Senate is out of session. It comes as NBC News learns that paramedics did CPR on somebody experiencing cardiac arrest at Senator McConnell's home on June 14th, the day that he was hospitalized. That according to fire dispatchers on the scanner audio.
Medical of paramedic agent 3, medic 3, ALS response unconscious.
CPR in progress.
EMS 2 response.
It's fire EMS dispatch right there. And according to the audio, the first medic who arrived to McConnell's house started giving somebody CPR before another EMS team arrived on the scene as well. NBC Sahil Kapoor joins us now. The audio seems to raise more questions about the possibility that this was life-threatening.
What's up, folks? Dr. John Podcast is here, so this is happening right now. On June 14th, a 911 call was placed for Mitch McConnell at his residence for a suspected cardiac arrest, but his office provided almost no details for weeks. The information vacuum filled with speculation so ugly that even those who created it are now scrambling to contain the fallout. Because here's what happened next. An independent journalist went and obtained that 911 call. Not the Senate, not the party, not a press office doing its job. A single reporter digging. And only then, only after the recording surfaced, did McConnell's staff finally acknowledge that he was still at George Washington University Hospital. Still in the hospital. Which raises the question that nobody in that building wants to answer. Why did it take a leaked emergency call to get that basic fact out of them? That's not privacy. Privacy is a family declining to discuss the details of a medical procedure. This is different.
What have you learned based on being on Capitol Hill and working the halls?
Well, Tom, Senator McConnell has not been spotted anywhere in the Senate or on Capitol Hill since this incident occurred. By my count, he has missed the last 21 votes. There is no timeline for his return. I think just covering him and following him for many years, he has certainly slowed down over the last few years. Sometimes we can see him in a wheelchair being wheeled on and off the Senate floor to vote. Sometimes he has aides around him helping him walk in certain places. His office did not reveal the details of this incident. They did say, however, in a June 14th statement, and let's show it, that Senator McConnell was admitted to the hospital this morning. He is receiving excellent care, end quote. That's from his spokesman, David Popp, on the day of June 14th. In subsequent statements, the spokesman said he's been working with staff, that he's fully engaged both on Senate matters, Kentucky business. The Senate is currently on recess until July 13th, and then it's back for just a few weeks and then gone for a month. So we don't know when Senator McConnell will be back, but he is still representing the state of Kentucky through the end of this year until his term expires.
This is an entire political operation deciding that the American public did not need to know whether one of the most powerful men in the government was conscious. And so the vacuum did what vacuums do. It got filled, and it got filled with the worst possible thing. Right now, the loudest voices in MAGA world are openly accusing McConnell's own staff and Republican leadership of running a cover-up. The influencer Laura Loomer went on social media and claimed that a high-level source close to the White House told her McConnell is brain dead and being kept alive by machines. Now, let me be extremely clear because I am not in the business of laundering rumors for anybody. There is no proof of that. None. Zero. It's a claim from an influencer source to an anonymous somebody with nothing behind it. I am not telling you it's true. I'm telling you it's out there. It's everywhere. And millions of people now believe it. And the reason they believe it is the black hole. The silence built that rumor. The silence is the fuel.
He's 84 years old. He's supposed to be retiring in January, right? And as we've reported, this is not his first serious health scare.
That's right. He announced well ahead of this cycle that he would not be running for re-election. He also stepped down after a remarkable 18-year run as Senate Republican leader, the longest ever in January of 2025. And you're correct. There have been multiple health issues that he's faced in recent years. Let's take a look at some of them. This incident, June 14th, he was hospitalized. February 2026, he spent more than a week in the hospital with what his staff described as flu-like symptoms. He was spotted in using a wheelchair on multiple occasions, getting help walking, as I mentioned. 2023, he tripped during a DC dinner and was hospitalized with a concussion. The same year, he had multiple on-camera freezes during press conferences that got quite a bit of attention. About 4 years earlier, he fell at home, fractured his shoulder. As I mentioned, he was the Senate Republican leader for 18 years until just last year. His responsibilities have reduced since he gave up that position, but he is still the chair of the powerful Senate Rules Committee and a senior member of the Appropriations Committee, Tom.
Well, listen, we wish him well. We wish him a speedy recovery, whatever's going on. Sahil Kapoor, thank you very much.
And it's not just her. This is not one fringe account. Breitbart's Washington bureau chief Matthew Boyle, a guy with a very real perch in conservative media, publicly said McConnell's staff should produce proof of the senator's condition one way or the other right now. That's Breitbart. That is the right demanding receipts from the right. Republicans demanding proof of life from Republicans. The call is not coming from outside the House. It's coming from upstairs. And the response from McConnell's people has been to insist he's fine, he's engaged, he's working, and to offer as their evidence that allies have had lengthy 20-minute conversations with him. 20-minute conversations. That's the proof. That's what they're leading with.
CNN obtained video of emergency responders taking Senator Mitch McConnell to an ambulance. The neighbor who shot the video told CNN the Capitol Police blocked the street and other neighbors reported seeing McConnell's face. This was a month ago, and it comes nearly a month after a spokesperson for McConnell first reported that the senator has been hospitalized, but few other details have been released. Let's get to Annie Greer, who helped break this story. So talk to us about this video and how it fills in the pieces of the puzzle.
So, John, what I heard from a neighbor of McConnell's around 8:30 in the morning on June 14th, this neighbor opened their door to commotion on the street. They saw two ambulances, a fire truck, and Capitol Police had blocked off the entire road. So this neighbor stayed on the street to try and figure out what was going on. And about half an hour later, at around 9 o'clock in the morning, this neighbor saw a person from McConnell's home being carried on a stretcher.
And I want you to notice what that sentence is actually doing, because it is doing something very specific and very slippery. It sounds reassuring. It is designed to sound reassuring, but it tells you exactly nothing that a medical professional would recognize as information. It's a vibe. It's a testimonial. It is the political equivalent of saying, trust me, bro. And when the question on the table is whether an 84-year-old man who reportedly went into cardiac arrest is capable of doing his job, the answer cannot be, well, a friend of his said the phone call went nicely. That's not a medical update. That's a hostage video without the video. So here's what this story actually is, and it's not gossip. And I need you to understand that before we go further, because I know what the temptation is. The temptation is to make this about whether you like Mitch McConnell. And listen, hate the guy, love the guy, that's your business.
Into an ambulance and said that they saw this person was wrapped in a blanket and that their feet was exposed, and that another neighbor standing next to them identified McConnell's face and saw that McConnell wasn't wearing an oxygen mask. So the firsthand witness that I spoke to said that they tried to ask Capitol Police what was going on, and all they were told was it was a medical emergency. They wouldn't confirm who it was for. And these new details come as we know very little about Senator McConnell's condition, why he was brought to the hospital on June 14th, and why he remains there.
Joining us right now is emergency physician, Dean of the Yale School of Public Health, Dr. Megan Ranney. It's great to see you, Dr. Ranney. Clearly, Mitch McConnell is not your patient. So having said that, the neighbor sees that he's taken out on a stretcher. There's EMS audio of emergency responders being called to the home for an unconscious person for cardiac arrest. Someone is heard saying CPR in progress. How serious is this case if this comes into your hospital?
But that's not the story. The story is that this man sits on appropriations. That's the money committee. That is the committee that decides whether the government stays funded and open. And if he is not functional, if the party is quietly steering around a man who cannot actually do the work, then the United States government is being run in part by a fiction. And nobody voted for a fiction. And here's the wider thing. The thing that turns this from a Washington story into your story. CNN just put out a piece calling this a growing epidemic, politicians hiding health problems, an epidemic. And they're right. And the maddening part is that we supposedly already had this fight. Remember, we had a whole national reckoning about transparency during Joe Biden's presidency. Every network, every panel, every op-ed page. We were all going to do better. We were all going to demand more. And then the second the spotlight moved, everybody went right back to the same playbook. Hide it, downplay it, insist everything's fine, attack the people asking, wait for it to blow over. And the public, reasonably, correctly, has learned to assume the worst, because the worst keeps turning out to be true. Let's go inside the blackout because I think almost everyone is reading this thing wrong. And the wrong reading is exactly what the people in charge are counting on. The common take is that this is a privacy issue, that a man had a serious medical event and his family and staff drew a curtain around it, and that's their right, and everybody demanding details is being a ghoul. And on the surface, that sounds humane. It sounds decent. It's the take that lets you feel like a good person, but it collapses the second you actually think about it for 10 seconds. So let's think about it for 10 seconds. Nobody is asking for his chart. Nobody wants his lab results. Nobody needs to know his cholesterol. The question, the only question, is one single binary. Can this man do the job the public is paying him to do? Yes or no? That's it. That is not a private question. That is the most public question there is. Because a Senate seat is not a possession. It's not an heirloom. It's not something you own and get to keep in a drawer. It's a piece of public power held in trust, and the people who handed it over have an absolute right to know whether the person holding it is actually there. And when the answer to that question is being managed by a communications team instead of a doctor, you're not looking at privacy. You're looking at a cover-up wearing privacy as a costume. And here's the part that makes it worse. Everything they did made it worse. Every single move. Think about the sequence. Total silence for weeks. That creates suspicion. Then a journalist digs out the 911 call that confirms the suspicion because now people know you were sitting on something. Then only after the leak you confirm he's in the hospital, which tells everyone you would have kept sitting on it if you hadn't been caught. And then finally you offer as your proof of life that some allies had nice long phone calls with him. And at that point you have constructed step by step the single most suspicious possible version of events. If they had come out on June 15th, put a physician in front of a camera and said, here's what happened, here's the treatment, here's the outlook, here's when we'll update you again, this story dies in a day. One day. Instead, it has metastasized into a brain-dead rumor being pushed to millions of people. They did that. Not the internet, them. Because here's the thing about a secret in a media environment like ours. A secret is not a wall. A secret is a screen. And people will project absolutely anything onto a blank screen. That's what humans do. And in a political culture that is already convinced the elites lie constantly, the thing they project is always going to be the darkest possible option. So the blackout didn't protect him. The blackout is what generated the rumor that he's a corpse on a ventilator. The people trying to protect his dignity destroyed it. And I would love to say that's ironic, but it's not ironic. It's predictable. It happens every single time. And every communications professional in Washington knows it happens every single time. And they do it anyway because the instinct to hide is stronger than the evidence that hiding never works. Now let's talk about the doctors, because there's a group of people who always know the truth in these situations, and they are almost always the ones told to keep their mouths shut. And this is the part of the story that goes way beyond Mitch McConnell. Think about the position a physician is in here. They have the actual information. They know the condition. They know the prognosis. They know whether the 20-minute phone call was a real conversation or something considerably less impressive. And they are surrounded on all sides by people whose careers depend on that information staying inside the room, not the family, the staff, the party, the people with something to lose. And what happens to medical professionals who talk? Look at the pattern because it is a pattern. The former NIH director, Francis Collins, has spoken publicly about staff feeling muzzled during the Trump-era cuts. Muzzled scientists and public health officials in the government feeling like they could not say true things out loud. And there are frontline doctors who have been fired after going public about safety conditions and health crises they were witnessing with their own eyes. Fired for telling the truth about what was in front of them. So when we ask why nobody with actual medical knowledge is stepping forward and clearing all this up, this is why. Because the professional cost of honesty in this system is enormous, and the professional cost of silence is basically zero. And once you build a machine like that, you don't get to act surprised when it produces silence. And here's where I want to zoom all the way out, because this is the real story, and this is the part that I guarantee nobody in MAGA world wants to sit through. Look at who is leading the charge for transparency here. Look at who is banging the drum, demanding proof, insisting the public has a right to know the true medical condition of a powerful 84-year-old man. It's MAGA media, it's Breitbart, it's the influencers, and they are on this narrow point completely right. The public does have that right. Congratulations. You found the correct principle. Now let's apply it. Let's just apply it evenly one time and see what happens. Because there is another very powerful man in Washington whose medical information has been handled with, let's be generous, a certain creative flexibility. Trump's own health disclosures have been a running mystery for a decade. Test results that appear and disappear. Physicals with timelines nobody can quite pin down. Cognitive tests that get bragged about in enormous detail while the actual medical reports stay conveniently vague. Commentators have spent years dissecting the strange scheduling, the missing paperwork, the letters that read like they were dictated by the patient, and the entire national security question underneath it. The fact that this is a man with nuclear codes and a health record the public has never fully seen is treated as unspeakable, off limits, rude to mention. So the same movement demanding proof of life from Mitch McConnell has spent 10 years running interference on exactly the same question about their own guy. And I want to be precise here because precision matters. I'm not telling you Trump is secretly incapacitated. I have no idea, and neither does anybody yelling about it online. And that's the entire point. Nobody knows. That's the problem. The information does not exist in public. And the people currently screaming that McConnell's staff must produce proof right now are the same people who would tell you it's a disgrace to even ask the same question one building over. That's not a principle. That's a weapon. And a principle you only aim at your enemies isn't a principle at all. It's just a stick. And that tells you what this McConnell thing actually is underneath. Because if this were really about transparency, it would apply to everybody. It doesn't. So what is it about? Power. McConnell is the old guard. He's the establishment. He is the last big obstacle to a total, complete, no survivors takeover of the Republican Party. And a leader who might be incapacitated is a leader who can be replaced. So the health rumors are not really about his health. They're a lever. They're a way to force a leadership change without anybody having to admit that's what they're doing. And the beautiful thing about a health rumor from the perspective of the person spreading it is that the target can't fight back. What's he gonna do? Hold a press conference. He's in a hospital. That's the whole point. The silence they're exploiting is the silence he cannot break. Let me tell you about the pattern that should genuinely alarm you. There's a reason this keeps happening, a reason the same playbook gets used over and over. And it's not because politicians are bad at communication, it's because the incentives are completely broken. When a powerful person gets sick, the people around them have a choice. They can tell the truth and face immediate fallout. Questions about succession, questions about fitness, questions about whether the person should step down. That's messy, that's risky, that threatens careers. Or they can say nothing, and in the short term, nothing happens. The job continues, the power stays in place, the machine keeps running, and that short-term decision, that choice to just wait it out becomes permanent. Because there's never a good time to come clean. There's never a moment when the truth becomes more convenient than the silence. So the silence just stretches and stretches until someone else breaks it. And by then, it's too late. The damage is done. The trust is gone. And the rumor has already won. And the really dark part is that this isn't just happening in Washington. This is a national problem. Governors, mayors, CEOs, university presidents. Any institution with a powerful figure at the top has this exact same dynamic. Someone gets sick, the inner circle closes ranks, the information stops flowing, and the public is left to guess. That's not how a functioning society works. That's not how a democracy works. And yet we've all just accepted it. We've all just nodded along and pretended that a vague statement from a press secretary is enough. It's not enough. It never has been. And the fact that we keep accepting it is why it keeps happening. Think about what McConnell's staff actually did here. They took a medical event, something that happens to people every day, something that could have been handled with a simple, straightforward statement, and they turned it into a national crisis of confidence. They didn't have to do that. They chose to. They chose silence. They chose opacity. They chose to treat the American public like children who couldn't handle the truth. And the result is that millions of people now believe a sitting senator is brain dead on life support. That's not a failure of communication. That's a failure of basic judgment, and the people responsible should be held accountable for it. Let's break down what it all actually means. 4 points. Simple. Here we go. First point, the facts. Stripped of every bit of spin from every direction. On June 14th, a 911 call went out describing a suspected cardiac arrest and CPR at McConnell's residence. His office then went effectively dark for weeks, offering no meaningful detail about the ailment or the prognosis. It took an independent journalist obtaining that emergency call before his staff would even confirm he was still at George Washington University Hospital. And in the vacuum, MAGA influencers began pushing an unproven claim that he is brain dead and on life support, while conservative media figures publicly demanded that his staff produce evidence one way or the other. That is the factual spine of this story. Everything else is somebody's agenda. And notice what's missing from that spine. A doctor. At any point, anywhere, there isn't one. Second point, this is not a gossip story. And if you let people file it under gossip, they win. Mitch McConnell sits on appropriations. That is the committee that controls government funding. His absence has real consequences for whether this government stays open and functioning. And in a Senate where margins are thin and every single body in that chamber matters, an incapacitated member is not a human interest story. It's a structural problem. It means votes get planned around a ghost. It means decisions get made in his name that he may or may not have actually made. And that should terrify you regardless of what you think of the man, because if that can be done for him, it can be done for anyone. And there is no rule anywhere that says the next person it's done for will be someone you want anywhere near that kind of power. Third point, who benefits from the blackout? His staff benefits, obviously. Their jobs exist as long as he does. Their access, their influence, their whole professional world runs through him. The party leadership benefits because an uncertain McConnell is easier to manage than a confirmed vacancy that triggers a whole succession fight in public. And the rumor mongers benefit most of all because silence is the best possible input for their machine. You cannot fact check a black hole. They get to say whatever they want and then point at the wall of no comment and go, well, why won't they deny it? And that is the oldest trick in the book. Make an unfalsifiable claim, then treat the absence of a rebuttal as a confession. And who loses? The public. Every time, you lose the ability to know who is actually running the country. And that is not a small thing to lose. Fourth point, this is a system, not an accident. And it is getting worse, not better. CNN called it an epidemic, and that's the right word, because it spreads and because everyone catches it. We just went through this. We just did this whole national argument about Biden and transparency and what the public deserves to know. Everybody agreed, everybody said never again, and here we are months later watching the exact same movie with a different cast. Silence, then denial, then a leak, then a grudging half confirmation, then the demand that everyone move on. And the reason it keeps happening is very simple. Nobody is ever punished for it. There is no penalty. There's no law that says a member of Congress who is incapacitated must disclose it. There's no enforcement. There's no consequence. And a rule with no consequence is just a suggestion. And powerful people ignore suggestions professionally. So what should actually happen here, and what do we watch for next? 3 things, and keep your eyes on all 3. Number 1, watch for an actual physician. Not a spokesman, not an ally describing a lovely phone call. An actual doctor with an actual name, making an actual statement they could actually be held accountable for. If that never comes, that tells you something, and it tells you something loud. Number 2, watch the votes. Watch whether he shows up, watch whether appropriations moves without him, and watch how leadership talks around the gap. The schedule will tell you the truth long before the press office does. Number 3, watch the rumor pushers. Watch whether the people demanding proof of life today are still demanding it next month, or whether they quietly stop the second they get the leadership change they actually wanted, because that will tell you definitively whether any of this was ever about the truth. And I want to close on the thing underneath all of this, because I don't think it's really about Mitch McConnell at all. It's about a simple question. Do you have the right to know who is actually running your government? Not their diagnosis, not their chart, just are they there? Are they present? Is the person holding the power actually the person holding the power? And the honest answer right now in this country is that you don't have that right. Not really. Not in any enforceable way. You have whatever a press office decides to hand you on a given Tuesday. And they have learned over decades that if they hand you nothing and simply wait, you will eventually get bored and go look at something else. That's the strategy. That's the entire strategy. Outlast your attention span. And the sickest part is that the blackout doesn't even work. It never works. It didn't work here. All it did was hand the wildest possible rumor a completely open field to run in. And now millions of Americans believe a man is dead on a ventilator. And the only people who can prove otherwise are the exact same people who decided you didn't deserve an answer in the first place. They made this bet. Every rumor about that man is a rumor his own operation manufactured through pure, arrogant silence. So no, I'm not going to tell you Mitch McConnell is brain dead, because I don't know. And neither does Laura Loomer, and neither does anybody else with a keyboard and a theory. I'm going to tell you something that should bother you more than the rumor does. Nobody will say. Nobody in a position to know will simply stand up and say. And in a healthy republic, that alone will be the scandal, not the illness, the silence. Think about what this means for the institution of the Senate itself. The Senate is supposed to be the deliberative body, the place where serious people do serious work. But how can it function if its members are hidden from view? If their capacity to serve is a secret? If the public is left to guess whether a vote was actually cast by a senator or by a staff member acting in their name? That's not democracy. That's a facade of democracy. And the people who are responsible for maintaining that facade are the very same people who are currently demanding transparency from others. The hypocrisy is staggering, and it should make you angry, not because of Mitch McConnell, because of what his treatment represents, because of what it says about how power actually works in this country. Now, here's what we're doing next. I'll be honest, it's the part of this that actually keeps me up, because if the Senate can quietly operate around a member who may not be able to function, if the staff can vote his interest, speak in his name, and hold his seat while the public gets nothing but reassurances, then we need to talk about who is actually casting those votes, who's writing those statements, who's making those decisions, because somebody is. Somebody always is. And I'm going to show you exactly how that machinery works and why it's a lot more common in Washington than anybody wants to admit. The system doesn't stop when a senator gets sick. It just gets quieter. And the people running it get harder to see. But they're still there. They're still making decisions, they're still wielding power, and the public has no idea who they are or what they're doing. That's the real story. That's the one that should terrify you, not the health of one man, the health of the entire system that allows this to happen.